So in the previous video, we talked about the importance of detachment, the importance of abhyas, the practice, detachment, the vairagya, and practice, the abhyas. The peace is not in the external. The external elements are not the source for the peace and the bliss. In the external world, or in simple words, in the world, the happiness that we are deriving is not permanent, it's temporary. So there are two types of happiness. One is the worldly happiness, and one is the divine happiness. Actually, happiness is the divine happiness, which is called Anand. Because the happiness which is ephemeral, the happiness which is momentary, the happiness which is short lived, the happiness which is impermanent, the happiness which is temporary, what kind of happiness is that? So let us understand the difference between the worldly happiness and the real happiness. The happiness that we derive from the world, we consume a sweet, we consume an ice cream. But the happiness we derive from the ice cream is not permanent. It is short-lived. And the happiness that we derive from the ice cream is not infinite, it is finite. And the happiness that we derive from the ice cream is not sentient, it is insentient. So there are three defects with the worldly happiness. It is limited, or in other words, it is finite, and it is impermanent, that means it is temporary, and the third, it is not sentient, it is insentient. Compared to this worldly happiness, which is temporary, which is limited, and which is insentient, it is not full of life. It is lifeless. Compared to that, the happiness that you derive from the divinity, from God, is permanent. It is ever increasing. It is infinite, and it is sentient. That is the type of happiness our soul wants. Otherwise, it is like we are running after the mirage. In the desert, because of the total reflection, it appears that there is water and the deer will run, but there is no water. The illusion of the shadow is coming from the total reflection. There is a mirage, there is a mrigmarichika. So, we are looking for the real happiness and not a mirage-like happiness, which is not going to be permanent at all. That is the purpose of mind management. That is the purpose of the Lord speaking the Bhagavad Gita to Arjun, teaching all of us that we need to manage our mind, we need to control our mind, we need to relate to the one who is the Supreme, who is the Creator, who is all in all, who is the Supreme Mother, the Supreme Father, the Supreme Friend, the Supreme Wealth, the Supreme Knowledge. And the problem is when we meditate, we neglect this most important aspect. And then we are trying to derive benefits out of meditation. This is the defect which we are learning in the Formula 44 in the element called mind management or the meditation. So in Patanjali Yoga Sutra also, there is Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dhyan, Dharana, Samadhi. So the state of reaching that perfection where the mind becomes completely tranquil, the mind becomes completely blissful. The mind becomes completely unaffected by the situations, whether a stressful situation, whether so-called sorrowful situation or so-called happy situation. In all these cases, the mind remains in a state of tranquility, in the state of steadfastness. That is the sthit pragya mind, which is what is Bhagavad Gita teaching. So in Bhagavad Gita, we keep talking about the mind, we keep learning about mind. Right from the chapter 2, Shri Krishna is talking about, apuryamanam achala pratistham samudramapa pravishanti sarve yadvat sakama pravishanti yadvat sashantim apnoti nakama kami. Like so many streams and rivers are entering the ocean, but the ocean remains tranquil. Similarly, we need to cultivate the mind which remains unaffected by thousands of desires bombarding the mind. And that is only possible with the discovery of God, the discovery of the inner supreme reality to which we need to associate ourselves, and that is the detachment, and that is the practice we spoke in the previous verse. Otherwise, we will read so many techniques. For example, when we went to the management school, we started learning about behavioral sciences. We learned about Douglas McGregor's X and Y theory. And in the organizations, there are two types of people. One is in the category X, one is in the category Y. Means some people are by nature enthusiastic, they want to work hard, they have a goal, and the other set, they are lazy. So we tried to classify people in those two brackets. That was Douglas McGregor's X and Y theory. Then there is a need hierarchy theory by Maslow, that there is a pyramid of needs, physiological needs, and the safety needs, and the social needs, and the status needs, and the self-actualization. We read about Victor Vroom's expectancy theory. We read about Sheldon's theory, where he classifies people in their body structure form: ectomorph, mesomorph, endomorph, and then he tries to analyze the personalities. We learned about FIRO-B, fundamental interpersonal relationship orientation. We learned about transactional analysis of Eric Berne, where there is a PAC model, parent, adult, child model. We learned about psychoanalysis of Sigmund Freud, where he talks about id, ego, and superego. We learned about managerial grid theory, which I found extremely interesting because the couple from the Harvard, the professor couple, Morton and Blake, and I think Nobel Prize winner, they came out with this managerial grid in which they classified, orientation to task and orientation to people. And they classified managers according to their score on the x-axis and y-axis. We learned about a plethora of techniques. But when I learned it, it really fascinated me. But then I always felt it doesn't convey the entire picture. I read In Search of Excellence, I read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I think I read What They Don't Teach at Harvard, Mark H. McCormack. All these big names, Peter Drucker, etc., etc. Did it satisfy me? No, it gave me a little bit of knowledge, but I always thought, the entire picture is missing. And that magic happened 25 years back when I started reading Bhagavad Gita. And the shlokas in Bhagavad Gita started giving me all the answers which these theories couldn't give me. For example, when I read shloka number 261, 62, Dhyayato hi vishya punsah sangateshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama kama krodho vijayate krodat bhavati sammoha sammoha smriti vibrama smriti bhranshad buddhi nasho buddhi nashat pranashyati. the impact it had on me, I can never describe in words. How beautifully Shri Krishna explains how the mind works. First, it contemplates on the subject. It starts thinking about the object and the personality, and then it develops the attachment. And then you develop the desire. Then either you fulfill your desire or you don't fulfill your desire. And how, when you fulfill your desire, it leads to greed. How, if you don't fulfill the desire, it leads to anger. I could never imagine a more beautiful explanation of the working of mind, how the desire develops, what are the consequences. And thereafter in Bhagavad Gita, every solution is given by the Lord. But then He has given us the free will. The choice is ours, whether we believe in that inner supreme reality to which we need to associate in order to fight the current coronavirus scare, or our negativities, or our stress, or our fear. Every answer is there in Bhagavad Gita. I always promise not to make the video longer than 10 minutes, and again I have exceeded, so I'll stop here. Hope the subject is becoming more and more exciting. Thank you so much. Radhe Radhe.